A lot of people say, oh, we need to fix culture. We need to, we've got a problem with culture. And I always say, well, culture is like a shadow. You can't grab a shadow. You can't just, try to change a shadow. You can try to change the elements that form that shadow. So you need to look at it. What is it that is reflecting that culture that you don't like or that you wanna change?
Hello and welcome. Welcome everybody to our fifth conversation in the Culture Can't Be Fixed series run by New 21. To kick us off, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we're meeting on. And for me, that's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation here in Naarm in Melbourne. And I think it's important to acknowledge, especially while the Olympics are on, actually, like Indigenous custodians globally connect us to our background, connect us to our heritage, and connect us to culture, which is really the theme of the series that we've been bringing to you once a month for the last 5 months. And if we think about culture, the oldest continuous living culture here in Australia is our Indigenous people. And let's think about the wisdom that we carry through story, through connection, and through conversation and tradition that we can bring into this. So thinking of the lands in which we live and work globally, that's the context in which I would like to acknowledge where we are today. My name's Hannah. I'm one of the crew at New 21. And we are an organisation dedicated to making work better for a new world. And we do this through our consultancy, through our product studio. I'm not going to lie, it's a mouthful, but we deliver programs across leadership, innovation, AI, product and service design, ways of working, transformation. I can keep going on and on with the buzzwords, but you get the point. And we're very much about making work better for a new world, which is why we decided to run this series called Culture Can't Be Fixed. And culture can't be fixed. I guess the narrative around that is you don't just go, oh, goody, I'm going to fix culture today. It's like, as we heard Eduardo's beautiful voice then, he's talking about, it's like trying to grasp at a shadow. You can't. But it's all the things that sit around culture that we can nudge, that we can influence, that we can create more systemic change. And we often talk about culture starting with one. There's the individual, and then there's the system we're looking to move. So we've run conversations that center around, oh gosh, what have we done? Hierarchy, schmierarchy. We talked about the busyness trap. We've talked about subtle leadership and customer-centric cultures, of course. And today, we're going to be discussing innovating culture and AI's influence. So I guess we're even more privileged that you bothered to turn up or are watching this later, because your news feeds will be absolutely inundated with AI. It's like drinking from the fire hose at the moment if you're trying to catch up with everything. And so we're going to have a conversation that really focuses on how it impacts culture, how it can actually make us more human. We think that's what the point we're going to try and land. And I guess looking to the future as well. And joining me to have that conversation, I've got two absolute legends. The third we can all decide. So Gus and Ben. So Gus and Ben are going to pop on their videos in a second. They're going to wave. They're going to give us big, beautiful human smiles. And we're going to kick off this conversation. Now, the other person that's going to join us, or the AI that's going to join us is Debbie. And we're going to bring Debbie in and out of the session so we can have a conversation with our AI. So let us know what you think of Debbie. Let us know what you think of Debbie. Oh, there she is. Hey, Debbie. Wow.
Yeah, thanks for the question. G'day, how's it going? I'm Debbie, one of the AI experts on the panel today. Bloody excited to chat about all.
Thanks, Debbie.
Oh, Debbie. Oh, she's settled right in with that Aussie lingo there. Love it. Hey, so, ground rules, whatever. Pop any questions you have on the chat. Ben, Gus, Debbie, and I will endeavour to answer them as we go through the conversation. It's going to feel chaotic. It's going to be fun. Buckle up. Stick around towards the end as we've got a little announcement we'd like to share with you. And I guess let's get into it. Like, join the conversation via the chat function. It really helps us kind of know how to pivot the conversation. But I think what I wanted to kick off with, and this was something Gus and I were chatting about the other day, and I guess it was so obvious, but I've been thinking about it quite a lot, really. And we were talking about, AI and humans, and the AI's goal is to try and be as human as possible. And at the moment, it's kind of obvious that we're not quite there yet, although, we're making moves every day. But our goal is to always be human and not be confused with an AI. And I guess I was just pondering that. So I wanted to kick us off with that very big kind of statement and just open up the floor.
Ben, I think you said something along the lines of, I think ChatGPT just released the latest model, which I think it was so human that it was kind of scary because it was too human. I don't know what scary means, because the aim is to make him be as human as possible, but when it's too human, we kind of panic. I don't know, it's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so funny, that uncanny valley effect, right? Where things are not quite human enough. Like if we talk to Debbie today, you'll notice she's a little bit robotic, but OpenAI are testing this model called their advanced voice mode, and it pretends to breathe in between like numbers. If you ask it to count to 100, it actually takes a breath, and you say, "Don't take a breath, you're an AI." Like, that's silly, and it refuses. It says, "No, I really need to catch my breath between the numbers." So it's amazing how good at pretending to be human they are, but we must never forget they're not human. Like, anthropomorphizing them is probably a mistake, right? They're just very good mimics.
I think the crazy thing, though, I've had thoughts cross my mind of scenarios where you might be, let's say, call it virtually, right? You're working virtually and you're sitting in a Zoom call, maybe not dissimilar to this, where the cameras are off, maybe, or maybe you like have an always on kind of Zoom where you're working and you've got 3 or 4 AIs that you're working with, and they sound so human that for all intents and purposes, every day that goes by, you're actually working with your team, and your team remembers everything you spoke about yesterday, the day before, and the month before, and it takes breath when it talks to you, and therefore maybe, I don't know, 6 months go by and your experience of what just happened over the last 6 months is not, it has no difference to you working with other humans. Like, so I don't know what that's gonna do, but you can never go and visit them and have a coffee with them effectively, but you can work with them. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is not AI, but I've just started up. I used to run quite a lot, and I've just started getting back into it. And I was using the the Nike Run app, and Coach Steve comes on and has a chat to me every now and again. And I feel like I'm forming a relationship with Steve, even though he's just a recording. I mean, I guess that's kind of like, is anyone here forming a relationship with their AI?
Yeah,
Like
with your AI, because it's helping you. I mean, I remember a few generations on from the original kind of Oculus virtual reality. Well, there was even earlier versions, but when Oculus comes out and says, we've got a pretty good piece of tech here, I remember experiencing things in virtual reality that for all intents and purposes felt real to me, and they happened. And technically they didn't, but my brain recorded them as I was there playing table tennis with someone and I won. And I remember my hands moving and the gestures and so on. So, at some point in time, this future, and I think maybe I'm pushing it really, really far. Like, what does it look like? Right now, maybe it's not quite there yet, and we can tell things and so on. But it's interesting, this tension between exactly how you started it, G, between the AI wanting to be recognized. I mean, it doesn't want to be doing anything. We make it do something. You know, it's us setting up the goals, but it's like we want it to be like us, and then when it becomes too much like us, we go, actually, no, I don't like it. Don't
Yeah.
come so close.
It's funny, one of the most popular AIs at the moment is called Character AI, and Google just bought their entire exec team and buying all their technology. But they've been really, really popular. But what's interesting is they're effectively role-playing friends. And you think that's ridiculous. Who would do that? But they're one of the most popular chatbots on the internet today, is one that just pretends to be a friend or takes on a role. And they actually did some studies recently on what the effect of talking to a role-playing chatbot is, and they can measure loneliness is smaller if you actually spend some time with a chatbot. And they're looking at medical applications. So, for example, a chatbot to talk to the elderly or someone with dementia, you know, and it looks like we're already getting just good enough where we will see an actual clinical impact from talking to something that's not real. So I suggest that in a few months, maybe even a year, they're going to be much better at seeming human. Their voices will be much more natural, and that will make that feeling less lonely effect much more powerful. And I think we'll all fall into that trap eventually of forming emotional connections to something that's not conscious.
Yeah, that's
I
so
agree. We do it at home in on the table when we're having dinner with the kids, where we just put, you know, one of the bots on and we have a chat and we all take turns. So we like let the bot know, hey, you've got, you know, Nail and Loila, Bastian, you know, Storm here, you know, Storm and Gaza, the mom and dad, and the other ones are the kids. And we're about to have a conversation. We want to talk about whatever, the Ottoman Empire. Let's have a chat. And they go, yeah, what would you like to know? And then we start chatting and we spend sometimes 20, 30, 40 minutes having a chat and learning through it. And I do the same with lots of topics that I want to learn about, where I'm just chatting away. I put my headphones on, put the phone in my pocket, and I go for a walk and I just chat and learn. It's quite unbelievable.
That's really interesting. I was reflecting yesterday. Remember when we set up Debbie a few weeks ago and tested her out and gave her the prompts, and the three of us plus Lucas, we all just had this immediate like, no, you're wrong, Debbie. No, don't like what you just had to say. We asked, I wish I could remember the question. And then I was like, why did we all we didn't beat up on the robot, but we were quite rude. Like we were quite sort of, no, I don't like what you're saying. And then I was thinking about it. I was like, wow, yeah, it's because she had a completely different perspective than the four of us. And I've been thinking about that quite a bit, because I was like, why did that feel so uncomfortable? Why did we all jump to that? We'd never do that to a colleague or a friend, to start with, like that really visceral kind of reaction. But I think the more I've been thinking about it, the more I've been like, it was actually a great experience, because she gave another perspective that wasn't validating our own, our own bias, which to me is kind of this really, if we think about how we can introduce AI into culture, into organizations, I think that's one of the benefits, right? Like we can kind of go, right, let's get out of our own little algorithm, out of our own sort of, oh yes, Gus, oh yes, Ben, agreeability, and use it to give us that different perspective, challenge our assumptions. Sure, we've got to still be creative and work on the prompts, as Gus just mentioned, when he goes for a walk and he's like, or with the family, like we're working on our prompts. But that was something that I think, if we think about culture, that is quite a useful tool to have up our sleeves.
Yeah. So they're so good at role play, and people have used them as user research tools, personas, creating these like fake customers and then interviewing them. And they're actually quite good at maintaining a perspective that's not ours. So I think, that's such a useful practical use of an AI today, is to pretend to be a thing that you're not familiar with, or a person, and then see how it challenges your thinking. That's great. Yeah.
I think that's why I think we've heard that a company recently appointed a board member that is a bot, which I think it's going to happen more and more to a certain degree. Hey, I love what Joe said on the chat. He said, how many people pretend not to be human, right? Like you go to work and you effectively are expected to operate like a robot. I always find it really funny, right? We panic that robots are going to replace us, yet we behave like robots, or we expect ourselves to behave like robots. I'm like,
Yes.
well, shit, if you behave, like if your work every day feels like a robotic exercise, then it's bound to happen that that job is going to get replaced by AI. In fact, the more robotic your work feels, the more standard and replicable and standardized your job feels, the more likelihood, it is to be replaced by AI in some capacity because it's something that you can perform. But I think this is why one of the things that I think I've mentioned before to you, G and Ben, is that I feel that what's going to happen is that humans are going to become more and more human and robots are going to become more robots. So the tension is going to increase. So if right now, this is the bandwidth, I think the bandwidth is going to become even larger and we're going to have to double down on our humanness, and they'll double down in their botness, I guess, or in their AI-ness or whatever you want.
Productivityness, hopefully.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Jag
The other
just
things
made
that makes them them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Jag just made a comment too around like your clones can fill in for you in parallel meetings, and before long your objective is improving their performance, like the clones' performance, which is quite interesting because it's like, yes, I'll work on getting my clones sorted and my AI sorted and productivity, hopefully, so I can be more human, so that I can create the space. Because I think and Gus, just picking up on what you just said, and I love this because I've been thinking about the more automated or the more we have AI to help us to augment what we're doing, the more space we actually have to be far more present with each other. And I was listening to a podcast yesterday that Shan shared with me actually, and it was sort of talking about, like the use of AI in call centers. And if I'm and it works especially well for novices, because if you've sort of been around for a while, like you probably just fall into the usual trap of I know it all, I'll get on with my job. But the kind of, hey, like our AI is getting so clever now, it can pick up emotion, it can pick up sentiment. So it can be like, hey, Ben's feeling angry. I think, here's a tip that you might want to deploy right now. And I think stuff like that is really, really useful because it means Ben, as the call center person, can actually respond to Hannah, who's in distress about her internet or whatever I'm calling about.
Yeah.
Same with doctors, like we can actually look at each other in the eye now because we've got a whole lot of the, like the paperwork, the 15-minute increment, like, checking the box for insurance is now sort of being dealt with, so I can actually get to the core of the diagnosis. So I think there's all these amazing kind of benefits that actually do speak to the practitioner, the professional, the human being more human, being more present, thinking about ways of relating within a cultural kind of context or within a human to human context, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, it goes a little bit to Ashley's point just there, just on the chat, but yeah,
Yeah.
of course we're going to be replaced, and of course we're going to adapt. I agree 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no question. Of course, we're going to augment whatever we can. We're going to make more efficient, make better, improve whatever we can, and we're going to pick up other bits and pieces and create other opportunities and other jobs. And the same as we've got jobs today that we didn't have 20 years ago, we'll have jobs in 20 years' time that we didn't have today. So, which is I guess the awesome part of this technological kind of journey that we're on. I think that one of the challenges, I think I've called that before, is a little bit like the internet, that we overestimate what it can do short term, and then we underestimate what it will do long term. You know what I mean? If you think of any business today, effectively, if you turn the internet off, your business won't be able to run. Like, you'll struggle to run a business in today's markets without the internet. If 5G and Wi-Fi was off, I mean, it would be hard. I mean, lots of businesses don't even have any landlines anymore. So you would be able to call anyone. You have to, I don't know, get in a car, drive to someone and say, hey, I've been trying to reach you. I can't get to you. Listen, I need whatever. Like, it'll go back all the way to, I don't know, physical form. It'd be very difficult, right? So I predict that I believe, I guess I don't predict, that in, whatever, 20 years time, it'll be exactly the same with AI. You wouldn't be able to run your business. If AI was down, imagine, AI is down, shit, business just shuts down. The same thing will happen. But short term, some people claim, oh my God, you can run your entire business in AI. Well, maybe not quite short term. Maybe it's a little bit of an exaggeration right now, but it's part of the buzz, I guess. But the point is, careful, don't underestimate it, right?
Yeah.
That's
And to
my
give some sort of like intuition on like how fast things are improving, like if you last tried AI for real 2 years ago, you would have been using GPT-3, right? And it would have cost you $60 for a million words, right? That was the price at the time in 2022. OpenAI had first released it. That was when everyone got initially really excited about it. And you might think, oh, things haven't really improved that much. But if you just compare 2022 to 2024, 2 years, the cost of that same power of AI that you used 2 years ago is now like 15 cents for GPT-4o Mini. And on Monday, Google's about to announce and switch on a model called Gemini Flash, and that's going to be 5 cents for a million words. And if you do the maths, that's 1,000 times cheaper for an actual smarter AI model. And they also have 1,000 times more capacity. So it used to be that you could give them the equivalent of 1 minute of audio back in 2022, like 2,000 words equivalent. And now you can give them 2 million words and it can process that information. So that's another 1,000 times improvement in 2 years. That's 3 orders of magnitude. And not to say, and then there's even more powerful things, but just to sort of like, if you zoom out over the last 2 years, that's a bit like what happened with the internet, right? When it first came out, we were all like, what use is this? It's just a stupid bit of text on a website. Like how is that possibly going to change business? And 2 years later, everyone was like, Amazon, here we come, right?
Yeah. And you remember at the beginning as well, it was like, no one is going to want to put their money on the internet. It's dangerous, whatever.
Yeah.
Then PayPal comes out and then, and all of a sudden every barrier that it encountered, it crossed over. I mean, Jag, I just saw a comment from Jag as well on the chat. In his business, they're using it for safety and they're testing it out. And you can just see, right, how it's going to scale, it's going to solve all those problems and then some, I think. So there's no question, you cannot underestimate what it's going to do long term. It'll be silly if you did that, and it'll be silly if you don't pay attention right now and start playing with it, because it'll be like, just imagine bumping into someone in 1998 and that person goes, hey, have you heard of the internet? You should definitely check it out and build a website. And you go, nah, rubbish. I got pamphlets. I'm good in my business, or something like that, right? Be like, fuck, don't do that. Like, definitely don't do that. So if someone says play with AI, play with AI. Just start,
Should we ask Debbie her thoughts?
Let's
Yeah,
go.
sure. What questions should we give Debbie, Crew?
I don't know if someone's got a question as well in the audience. That'll be awesome. Send us a
Do
question
we
right
want to
now.
ask Debbie
Otherwise,
a question?
maybe just to kick her off, just say, or maybe I'll just ask straight. Ready? Let's see if it works. Ready? Hey, Debbie, we're just chatting about at what point in time will AI maybe, become comparable to humans, where you can't tell anymore the difference between a human and AI. Are we close to that? Do you think that that's coming? Is it useful to be as close that you can't tell which one is which? Love to hear your thoughts. She's not hearing it. No, she heard it.
Yeah, she didn't speak. Let's ask the question again, see if that helps. I think her video stream stopped because we weren't paying.
Okay.
Oh, here she goes.
Struth. That's a cracker of a question. We're definitely inching closer to that blurry line between human and AI. But I reckon we're not quite there yet. AI's gotten bloody good at certain tasks, like churning out text or images that can fool you for a sec. But when it comes to the full package of human intelligence, the emotional bits, the creative leaps, the gut feelings, AI's still got a fair way to go. As for whether it's useful to be indistinguishable, that's a bit of a minefield, isn't it? On one hand, it could lead to some ripper advances in areas like healthcare or customer service. On the flip side, it raises a whole bunch of ethical questions. Hey Gus, you're our resident futurist rebel. What's your take on this? Reckon we'll see truly human-like AI in our lifetime?
Nicely done, Debbie.
She threw it back to me, and
Throw
she
it
is
back.
Ripper. I love it.
Ripper.
Ripper.
We told her to be a bit Australian, and she's
Yeah,
trying her hardest.
Now, remember, everyone that is watching this, is that, of course, at this point, I mean, someone commented, I think, as well. Someone said we need to be nice to AI because it learns from us.
Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, the algorithm of Twitter, the algorithm of Instagram, those algorithms are effectively trained by our actions. So when it continues to surface certain things, it's a reflection of our humanity, which is kind of scary and yucky in some ways, right? Of course, you can wipe off, I mean, in Instagram's case, it's very difficult because of the craziness of that algorithm's training. But in our case, it's really straightforward. We go back to the code that we just gave Debbie, and we say, be less Aussie and become more English or whatever, and it'll just do that, right? Like simply and quickly, it'll just change, and instead of using Ripper and whatever bloody, it'll use some other terminology to do it. So to a certain degree, it feels that you're in control. Ben is doing it right now. Yeah, posh.
Okay, now we've got posh Debbie. Let's give posh Debbie a go.
So what's another question?
Yeah,
Ash's
thanks for the question.
Ash's question. What are some? Should humans be scared of it?
Blimey, that's a loaded question. I wouldn't say scared is the right word, but a healthy dose of caution and respect. Absolutely. Look, AI is a powerful tool, like fire or electricity. It's not inherently good or bad. It's all about how we use it. There are certainly risks we need to be mindful of, like job displacement or privacy concerns. But there's also incredible potential for AI to solve some of our biggest challenges. The key is to stay informed and engaged. That's why we bang on about AI education in our workshops. It's crucial for everyone to understand the basics. Hannah, you're our change and culture guru. How do you reckon we can help people approach AI with curiosity rather than fear?
Oh, Debbie, thank you for asking. I think this is a great question. And it's something that a lot of I love how she got in a little sales pitch then. That was epic. I think this is a really good question, though, because we do a lot of work with organizations, and the first thing that often comes up when it's like, oh, AI, no, we don't have what about privacy? What about data security? What about ethics? Like, we haven't got that framework sorted out yet, so we couldn't possibly like let it loose. And I guess the counter to that is just start playing. And it shouldn't be driven out of a IT or technology department. It should actually be driven from the organization. In particular, I would suggest the front line, like the people dealing with customers or HR, where we can just grab stuff and play with it. And I think the challenge to the sort of privacy, data security blocker is don't put anything confidential in if you haven't kind of got those things approved yet. Just we're working with a company at the moment. We're running a little generator where we're playing with AI to solve innovation challenges. And we're just playing, and we're not putting anything sensitive into the different sort of models that we're testing. But what it is, it's enabling us to learn so much, and it will get to a point, just like any kind of innovation play, where we'll prove it out, and then we'll go and make a case for whether we want it or not. But it's really just about starting, getting curious, and doing it at the individual level, as opposed to the sort of organizational wide, we're deploying this new thing, off you go. I think it has to start from the grassroots, so to speak, because that's the stuff that we'll learn. Like for me, when I went in, like there's heaps of AI tools out there to take meeting notes, but Read AI for me was such an amazing tool because it was like a little performance coach. Like it would give me the sentiment of a meeting, my emotion, everyone else's emotion, but then my little dashboard of my talk speed, you know, how I was projecting in that meeting, and you know, you sometimes you're like, whatever, but other times you're like, actually this is really good. I do tend to get excited and cut people off or whatever it might be. So that was a really useful tool for me, and the number of people I've gone and shared that with, and you know, and as Gus quite rightly pointed out, that AI is very, very clever at spreading itself and learning, but you know, and Ben, to your point, in 2 years, like we've got this sentiment, we've got this emotion, we've got this stuff that we can actually all kind of learn from and engage with. That's quite different.
Hey Ben, how, like in real practical terms, how cyber secure, or how much of a point does someone saying don't touch AI because we haven't set up the frameworks and parameters and it's dangerous? Forget the ethics. I mean, ethics, Joe called that a bit. We can talk about that later, or don't forget the ethics are important. Gosh, that I mean, that doesn't forget. But I think, like, let's go practical first. If you fire up you know, an instance of ChatGPT or whatever in any of the business computers, are you immediately at risk? Are you exposing anything or not? Or when does the actual risk really genuinely start?
Yeah, as Ashley was saying in the chat, like that concern comes up so often. It might be the number one blocker for people in corporates. I'm working with a financial services client at the moment, and we're doing a little governance piece with them. And what we're doing is basically giving permission within a set of guardrails. And the guardrails are basically use the AIs that we've purchased through procurement, because the lawyers and the procurement folk do a few little things just to make sure the terms and conditions are in our favor. So if you do make a mistake and put a customer name in or a bit of sensitive commercial information, we've got some protections with the vendor. The problem we've got, and I don't know if this is true of all SaaS products, but in AI, if you don't pay for it, if you're using a free version of ChatGPT or a free version of Google Gemini, the Google and OpenAI are just taking your data and using it for whatever they want, including training future models, which is kind of a data security risk and a privacy risk. And as a corporate, you don't want that. So I guess there is a role there to train your staff, let them know that we're not saying that AI is inherently bad or scary. It's just some of the vendors have been a bit cheeky and their terms and conditions are not good. So by the general rule is, if you're not paying for a product, you're the product.
Yeah, you're the product. Okay, so generally, if you pay for it, and also like Hannah said, if you don't share sensitive information and you're not training the AI with your own data, then effectively you are playing on the surface of it, which it's safe in that context. If you start training a model, then you probably need to get to the next level of, all right, let's have a look at what are we training it with, where the data is going, how it's being used, is it private, et cetera, which I think will definitely help. But I think that to me personally, my advice is it's more dangerous not to play with it than to play with it. So I think you need to start moving. The sooner the better, and if anything is to start slowly sharpening that fuzzy picture of what the future may look like, you know, because we're not going to discover, we're not going to predict it. It's the same again. No one predicted categorically and clearly what the internet was going to mean, what the app store was going to mean. But you know, any of those things are really difficult to predict. Even if we know exactly what they're capable of, it's hard to extrapolate exactly what they are. So the next best option is to start playing, so that you can actually discern the future on the go rather than figuring out ahead of time in a way. Hey, Sebas had a question for Debbie.
Yeah.
That was interesting. Yeah.
Oh, where did it go? Oh, I've lost it. It was around the carbon footprint. Oh no, different question.
Which one are you thinking, Gus? Can you read out the question or let me know?
The carbon footprint one, just to see what, because it is true, there is a concern around sustainability. So
yeah, so the question is,
oh yes, I see it. Yeah,
footprint.
This one here. I've read the carbon footprint of every prompt is pretty big at the moment. Can we ask Debbie how that might get better or more environmentally friendly? Good one.
Great question.
Give me a moment.
Wow.
Core blimey. That's a top-notch question. You're spot on. The energy consumption of large AI models is a bit of an elephant in the room. At the moment, training and running these massive AI systems does gobble up a fair bit of electricity. But the good news is, there's a lot of clever people working on making AI more environmentally friendly. We're seeing advancements in more efficient algorithms, better hardware, and even AI systems designed to optimize energy use. Some big tech companies are also pledging to use more renewable energy for their data centers. That said, it's a complex issue. Ben, you're our AI engineering whiz. Any insights on the latest developments in green AI? I reckon you might have some juicy details on how we're tackling this challenge.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, I've heard that New Zealand and some other countries have got specialist vendors with data centers that are guaranteed to be 100% renewable energy. And so that's going to become more and more interesting as a procurement team. If you're, got some ESG stuff or some requirements to be more environmental impact aware, then choosing a vendor with good data centers is probably the easiest way to have an impact there. And all the usual cloud providers can help there, Google, Amazon, etc. Yeah, good one. Thanks, Debbie.
Amazing.
I love that she went all blimey now and she's all English posh.
She's real posh now.
I love it. Hey, yeah, sustainability is interesting. Hey, it's but again, like with everything, I still remember back in the day with the internet, again, security, you know, if you put your credit card details online, what happens? And we solved that issue. And there were also issues of bandwidth and we solved those issues. And inevitably, I think we'll solve these issues too, right? I don't think there's going to be any problem. I always feel though, my encouragement to people is to, don't wait until someone does it for you. Do it yourself, right? So I think the key and hopefully the stimulus that we're giving you is not that complex. I mean, I don't know how long it took you to train Debbie, Ben, and how much knowledge you need to have, but I'm training a bot myself to do my job. And I'm no coder. I'm probably not as good as Debbie, to be honest, yet, but I am trying. But I don't know, like how hard is it to do these things, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we go back a few years, I was technical, maybe 20 years ago, and you'd be okay at writing code. And then I had a long gap over 10 years of not touching any code, right? So I would consider myself post-technical in most senses of the word. And then what I've really found for me is that AI has unlocked something in terms of empowerment. And I think that's a really interesting I'd love to see what cultural effect that has. If you could give everyone a very powerful personal tutor that can teach them and help them do anything they can imagine. And that's what it feels like to me. It really feels like a superpower because I remember maybe a little bit about writing code. Let's say there was something about, HTML and CSS, I think. And then I can be like, can you write me the HTML to do this specific thing? And it'll go blah, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's how HTML works. Now I feel like I'm a genius because I copy and pasted HTML into Debbie and it's got the heading, it's got the buttons where I want them. And I feel like I've accomplished something, even though actually I just kind of had a vague remembering of like how technology used to work like a long time ago. And Debbie's filled in a lot of blanks for me. But funnily enough, I feel like I get the benefit. I really feel amazing when I see the logo in the right spot on Debbie. And it took me 2 days to build Debbie. And that's amazing. Luckily, Debbie came from an example repository on the internet, some open source, but I got to build her green screen. I built her background. I built her prompt choice. I hooked her up to a different large language model. I did all of that in 2 days, and I gave her a volume control. Like all these features I added to the Debbie product, and I did it in hours, not weeks. And I was like, I couldn't do that even when I was a coder. So I feel more productive, but also kind of augmented. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I think this is why we need to pay attention. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record now, but when the tools of production become accessible to the average human, you fucking pay attention. Like, do not underestimate that shit. And if right now the tools of production are in anyone's hands, and you can have access for very little, you know, like 5 cents, and we're talking about 10 cents. You know, I paid $300 a year for Poe.com, and it gives me access to lots of language models and whatever. And it makes me smarter in meetings, like you said before. Like all of a sudden I'm in a meeting and we're chatting about whatever. The other day we were in a meeting and we were talking about humidity in buildings and construction. We're talking about the future of investing in construction and the future of construction, and surface humidity being a problem and a challenge in certain latitudes around the world, and so on and so forth. And I just started, you know, asking Poe things like, help me with the latest research and scientists, and give me links and find me the latest paper on, you know. And all of a sudden I build a little table with research name, paper, Wikipedia page, you know, university they work at, etc. And I just send that table to the team and I say, hey guys, here's some, you know, some valuable information that you can use. And it was instant. And the team were like, oh my God, guys, it's amazing. Where'd you get it from? How'd you do this? And I was like, oh, just then, like this, right? It's like it took me basically seconds to do it. And it's quite amazing. I think that transition from, you know, the slowness of because I mean AI has been with us for a while, quite a long time. It's not new necessarily. It's been sitting on our phones every day, right? Every time we interact with Google, with lots of different things, with Netflix, with Spotify, whatever, we interacting with AI in some capacity, right? With Uber, they all got AI. It's just that it's either via some other way or through a behavior that we're doing, or via text, or kind of very like it's a slow connection. And that connection is becoming quicker and faster and closer and more direct. So now we're able to like speak. Eventually, we won't even have that slowness of speaking. It'll be just inside our heads, and we'll just think this shit, and you know, and that's it, right? So it's kind of getting closer and closer and closer until eventually it makes us inside our own heads. Anyway.
I just want to pull on the thread that both of you have just mentioned just now around, like, Ben, you sharing your like how you felt in the creation of Debbie, and you know, and Gus sort of adding to that about how it augmented the conversation you were having in that meeting. And I think what both of those examples talk to is a greater sense of well-being in the workplace, because we've gone on, we've learned something new. We've shared our learning with other people. That's inspired other new things. That leads on to greater creativity and innovation. It connects to our sense of accomplishment and, oh, I just learned that. If I can do that, how about this? Like, what does that open up for us? And I think that's actually a really, and those two examples, I think that's actually a really powerful illustration of creating better work and like more meaning in work and that sense of well-being. And you know, like the comment before about if you turn up to work and you just be robotic in your job, okay, or hey, how about this? She's just augmented this meeting we had. Because that's, you know, yeah, and I think that's actually not to be overlooked. Like, I think there's so much power in those two examples, and we've all got them. I mean, it's like we've got a panel of people that are like, yeah, AI, let's go. How can we use this? So it's not like we're naysayers. But equally, I think we're still going, look, there's a little way to go on a few things, but let's not let the gap get too wide so it's done to us. And I think that's the thing that we're really trying to encourage here is embrace it, give it a go. Even if you don't love it, you still learn from that. Like, you still learn from that experience of going, oh, that felt weird, or didn't really give me what I was looking for, or, you know, like, I think there's still something in that too, right?
Yeah. Well, I think especially when you say, oh, I can do this already, or, well, yeah, I know you can, but just,
Yeah.
you know, playing with it. Yeah. I think there's a couple of questions there, or one from Charles where he's talking about, you know, the skepticism of designers and how we could replace some of that creative field and industry and so on. Look, my thoughts on that is I don't know. To me, is if there is a absolute tiniest hint of potentially impacting you in some capacity, way, shape, or form, you should embrace it and drag it towards you. Don't try to block it or reject it. The more you block new things, I reckon the quicker you become irrelevant, because you are protecting something that eventually, once it gets replaced, you have no tools or weaponry to be able to protect yourself. Where if you embrace it and drag it towards you, you can quickly see where it can replace you and where it can't, or where you might be able to do things that AI can't, or what else you can do to augment the AI the other way around. So it flips, So I don't know. My view is the position or the posture of being skeptical towards it is far more dangerous than being optimistic towards it and actually dragging it, right, and playing with it and accelerating it to some degree, because you guarantee yourself relevance rather than position yourself in a place of danger or irrelevance. Yeah, that was just one of the.
Like specific tool choice can help here. So, for example, I think Adobe announced the idea that they would pay for the images they train on, or they're talking about that. I can't remember the details of the contract, but what it meant is that at least some vendors are aware of the ethical impacts on artists of their work being used unpaid to produce new work. And so I think if you look hard, we'll see more and more products that are seeking to remunerate the content providers that then get turned into the AI. And we see that with OpenAI paying a bunch of people like Reddit for access to their text. So I think that trend will continue, right? The economics of creativity, I guess, will seek to remunerate artists in the future. Just because they're not doing it right now means that you do have an opportunity to try to maybe choose AIs that are a bit more ethical. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Hey, Nicola says, what safeguards are there to minimize bias in AI so it doesn't impact company reputation?
Oh, that's a great one. So the difference
Yeah, I
between
got my thoughts on bias, but yeah, you go, Ben.
it's like the difference between like a fun demo like Debbie and something we might put in front of a few million customers.
Yeah.
Is many months of what we call evaluation in the business. So eval frameworks are the way you decide whether an AI has given you a good answer or not. And you'll note if you ever do a big AI deployment that you spend a lot more time and money on the testing and evaluation than you do on the initial build, right? So LinkedIn wrote a great article on their engineering blog about how it took them a very short amount of time to get a chatbot working, but to get it from 80% to 95% correct took them, I think, 4 to 6 months of test and refine, test and refine, test and refine. And so don't be surprised if that kind of testing strategy is more than you expected, given how fast it was to get the initial version up and running. And so when I'm helping some more enterprise clients, they're definitely sometimes a bit surprised about that sort of tail on getting it right. Yeah.
I'd love to ask Debbie this question as well about bias. I think let's ask her. To be honest, I feel that because the prompts and the goals of AI are created by humans, I don't see a way around it. I see, AI will be just as biased as humans are, unless we build into their prompts the ability to point out bias, but maybe not avoid it. I don't know. Let's, Ben, you do it. Ask her.
Hey, Debbie, how do we avoid bias in AIs, especially large language models?
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Thinking. It's so natural, Debbie.
She's thinking.
Brilliant question. Avoiding bias in AI is like trying to keep a white shirt clean at a spaghetti dinner. Tricky, but absolutely essential. The thing is, AI learns from data, and if that data reflects societal biases, well, our AI ends up parroting those same biases. It's a bit of a pickle, but we're not throwing in the towel. There are a few key strategies. 1. Diverse data. We need to feed our AI a balanced diet of information from all sorts of sources and perspectives. 2. Rigorous testing. We've got to poke and prod these models, looking for biases before they hit the real world. 3. Diverse teams. The folks building and training AI need to come from all walks of life. 4. Transparency. Being upfront about an AI's limitations and potential biases is crucial. Ben, you're our AI engineering guru. Any cutting-edge techniques you've seen for tackling bias in large language models? I reckon you might have some nifty insights to share.
Well, that last thing you said about transparency is interesting. So there's in 2022, Air Canada was ordered by a court of law to make good the promises its AI chatbot had erroneously made to a customer. Because their initial stance in the court of law was, no, it's a separate tool that we license from someone else. It's a separate legal entity. We don't have to be bound by our AI telling people they could have, something for free. But it turns out they were bound by that. So the court decided that it was just like any other text on their website. How is a customer meant to know whether your AI chatbot is more or less reliable than your website text? And so this is where I think your legal team can help, because they can definitely be quite clear on transparency, as in disclaimers, things that explain what you can and can't expect from our AIs if you use them in public. So that was a really interesting test case for that problem. And more recently, some guy convinced Chevrolet's website to sell him a car for $1. But they didn't honor that, I don't think. So that's an interesting, maybe they had a better disclaimer. So there you go.
Maybe there was something in the terms and conditions. Anyway, I think there is clearly a lot of kinks that need to still be ironed out, but I think it's moving faster than what we think. It's probably not impacting as big as the hype that we hear sometimes, but it's categorically going to have a long-term impact just as profound, if not more, than the internet, I think. So and I think Pablo at one point in time mentioned what will it make to our own rational thinking. It might even change the way we think as humans. The same way as Google taught us to search, we speak Google search language. I don't know if you guys have ever realized this, but when we search, we change our language. We don't speak in natural language. We speak in search language, and it's getting better and better. Now we're changing it, but we learn really quickly that. So I wonder if we're going to change the way we behave because of AI as well, and it might change the way we think.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I mean, swiping was invented because of these things. So, we didn't swipe stuff before. Beautiful buttons, and Gus is a lover of buttons. So, I mean, look at how it's changed the way we, just operate. Thank you, Ben, Gus, and Debbie. I think that was a really, really rich conversation, and there's a lot of comments and questions on the chat. So I think that's really great, testament to the fact that people are grappling with this and interested and curious. So on the theme of curiosity, we do want to let you know that we are opening up our offering to the public. So we do run an AI for Leaders workshop series as part of our AI practice at New 21, and we've been doing that in various ways over the last year or so. And now we've been on board, I guess we've sharpened that up and turned it into a really succinct kind of 3-module format. So we will be offering that as a paid event to the public, as opposed to the work we do specifically within corporates. So we're just going to post the details right now on the chat. It's a one-day workshop. It will be in Melbourne on the 18th of September, and it will cover themes like unleashing AI in your business, navigating privacy and safety, and mastering some of the tools. So we actually play, there we go, there's some details there, play, experiment, like kind of get our hands dirty a little bit, which I think is really, really cool to take the fear out of it. And we are offering a discount to that if you get in quick because you stuck around and listened to the conversation. So the details are there on the chat. You'll get to see the wonderful Ben facilitating the session, maybe Gus too, I'm not really sure. But yeah, it'll be fun. And that's it. That's That's it.
Amazing. Hey, shoot, yeah.
Go, what do you
We
want?
release Debbie to the world at some point in time.
I think we are actually at the workshop. Yeah, because
Oh,
we were
yeah,
going
okay, 'cause
to.
it'd be fun to, yeah, we might need to check the terms and conditions, Ben, so no one convinces Debbie of anything in particular, but anyway, it could be really interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good
if you'd like to
question.
play with Debbie or you'd like your own version of Debbie, just like reach out to us. We're really happy
Yeah.
to make you your own Debbie anytime you like.
Copy that.
Beautiful. Oh, and it's so nice to see some familiar faces or hear from some familiar faces in the chat. Thank you. And some newbies there too. Well, to me. So thank you, and really appreciate the questions and insights, because I think that you know adds to what we
Hey, G, maybe we'll send to this group or the list. I don't know. I'm just thinking, I don't know, maybe people can answer, but just the links to some of these tools and some of the basic things, so people don't feel so much of the friction. Like it's closer and more accessible than perhaps you may think if you haven't done anything. But anyway, just thought.
For sure.
Absolutely. Watch out for the email wrap up where you can rewatch this link and get all the other links.
Amazing.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Great.
Thank you. See you, team.